I'm Daniel, and when you slow the situation all the way down, what you're really looking at isn't a draft board or a headline about mistakes. You're looking at a series of football decisions that directly impact how the Kansas City Chiefs function in the moments that matter most. Inside the red zone, on third down, and late in games when spacing, timing, and discipline decide outcomes. This conversation starts with context. The Chiefs finishing 6-11 and landing the 9th overall pick isn't just a record-based outcome. It's the result of how fragile offensive efficiency becomes when situational structure breaks down. When Patrick Mahomes went down with a torn ACL late in the season, the offense didn't simply lose talent. It lost timing, anticipation, and problem-solving speed. Over the final stretch, the scoring average dropped to just over 11 points per game. And that number matters because most NFL games are decided by 2 or 3 red zone possessions. From a red zone perspective, this is important. Inside the 20-yard line, you're not calling plays to gain yards. You're calling plays to win leverage in tight space. That's where quarterback processing, route timing, and play sequencing matter far more than raw athleticism. The losses to teams like the Raiders and Titans weren't about being outmatched physically. They were about failing to convert short field opportunities into touchdowns. So when we talk about draft strategy, especially in the first round, I don't evaluate it in terms of splash or fan excitement. I evaluate it by asking one question. Does this decision make the Chiefs more efficient in high-leverage downs? One of the most commonly discussed ideas is drafting a running back early. On the surface, that sounds logical. The run game lacked explosion, and consistency was an issue. But when you slow it down, drafting a running back in the top 10 doesn't solve the red zone problem the way people think it does. In the red zone, rushing success isn't about the runner as much as it is about blocking angles, defensive alignment, and defensive hesitation. Most rushing touchdowns inside the 10 come from defenders being wrong by half a step, not from a runner breaking tackles in space. That's why the league consistently finds productive backs on day 2 and day 3 of the draft. When you look at Isaiah Pacheco, what stands out isn't flash, it's downhill urgency. His value shows up when defenses are spread thin by motion and play action. If the spacing is right, even an average run becomes efficient. If the spacing is wrong, even an elite back is swallowed up. That's the lesson here. Drafting a running back early doesn't fix spacing issues. It doesn't improve red zone geometry. And it doesn't help on 3rd and goal when defenses are compressed and reading keys faster than ever. The Chiefs don't need a hero runner. They need structural clarity, linemen who hold angles, receivers who threaten leverage, and play calls that force hesitation. This ties directly into how Andy Reid has historically built his red zone offense. The Chiefs at their best don't rely on overpowering defenses. They rely on sequencing, showing a look early in the game, then punishing it later near the goal line. Jet motion, condensed formations, delayed releases, these aren't gimmicks. They're tools to manipulate defensive eyes. When the Chiefs were converting red zone trips into touchdowns at elite rates earlier in the Mahomes era, it wasn't because they had the best running back in football. It was because defenses were constantly conflicted. Linebackers hesitated. Safeties froze. Corners were forced to choose between inside leverage and flat responsibility. That's also where Travis Kelce has been so critical. His routes in the red zone aren't about speed, they're about timing. He understands how long a quarterback needs. He understands when a defender's hips are committed. That chemistry turns 3rd and 6 into 1st and goal, and 1st and goal into touchdowns. Now let's talk about the other major concern, trading up. This is where patience becomes a football skill, not just a front office philosophy. The Chiefs only have 6 picks in this draft. Every one of those picks needs to contribute to situational football. Depth that can execute when injuries hit, when packages expand, and when game plans become more specific. Trading up costs more than picks. It costs flexibility. It limits your ability to fix multiple pressure points on the roster. And unless you're acquiring a player who immediately changes defensive math, someone offenses have to account for on every snap, it rarely pays off. From a red zone defensive standpoint, what the Chiefs actually need is disruption. Pressure that forces quicker throws. Edge players who compress the pocket so quarterbacks can't step up on 3rd down. That kind of impact affects every red zone snap, not just one position group. This is where roster balance matters. Moving up aggressively might feel decisive, but it often removes the very thing that makes a team resilient: options. Holding the 9th pick already puts Kansas City in range of a difference maker without sacrificing future leverage. You also have to consider the hypothetical scenarios being floated, like trading Trent McDuffie for additional first-round capital. Even if that were to happen, the smartest move from a situational standpoint wouldn't necessarily be to chase one star. It would be to spread that value across multiple roles that impact high-leverage downs. Cornerback play, pass rush rotation, interior offensive line depth. These don't make highlight reels, but they decide whether a defense holds on 3rd and 4 inside the 15. They decide whether an offense can stay on schedule after a negative play. This is also where I think Brett Veach has historically been strongest. When Kansas City has remained patient, allowing the board to come to them, they've consistently found players who fit specific roles in specific situations. That's how you build a team that survives December and January. What this entire discussion reveals is that the Chiefs' biggest risk in the first round isn't selecting the wrong player. It's misidentifying the problem they're trying to solve. The problem isn't a lack of talent at one skill position. The problem is restoring efficiency in confined space. That means prioritizing players who affect spacing, timing, and decision-making on both sides of the ball. When you zoom out, the lesson from this season is clear. Without Mahomes, the margin for error vanished. That's not a quarterback problem. That's a structural one. The draft is the opportunity to rebuild that structure so that when the offense enters the red zone, it has answers, not hopes. I'm Daniel, and when I watch this team through a red zone lens, I don't see a franchise that needs to gamble. I see a franchise that needs to recommit to precision. If the Chiefs do that, the record will fix itself. And more importantly, the moments that decide games will start tilting back in their favor.